Off the coast of modern-day Turkey, the wreckage of a ship from 1320 BCE sits on the Mediterranean floor. Inside its hull is a staggeringly diverse cargo: carved elephant ivory, ostrich eggshells, gold jewelry, and cedar wood from Lebanon. It is a perfectly preserved cross-section of a globally connected world. The bulk of that ship's cargo was made up of rough slabs like this: raw oxhide ingots of copper and tin. To forge bronze, a blacksmith requires 10 parts copper to 1 part tin. Because tin was incredibly scarce, acquiring those raw ingredients required a specialized supply chain that crossed continents. On a map of the late Bronze Age, a massive economic network appears. The Mycenaeans, Hittites, Egyptians, and Babylonians were locked together by shipping lanes. Copper was mined in Cyprus, but tin was hauled thousands of miles from Afghanistan. This level of integration generated immense surplus wealth, funding standing armies and monumental stone fortresses. It proves that globalization isn't a modern invention. It's an ancient phenomenon. Shortly after 1200 BCE, those stone palace was burned. Across the eastern Mediterranean, almost every major urban center was violently destroyed or completely abandoned within a single generation. International trade flatlines and palaces are abandoned. Even the ability to read and write vanishes, as sophisticated accounting scripts like Linear B are erased from human memory. The collapse of an integrated world usually leaves a footprint, but to find it, we have to look past the smoke and the ruins. For over a century, historians blamed the collapse on mysterious foreign marauders known as the Sea Peoples. This Egyptian stone relief depicts Pharaoh Ramses III's armies fighting off massive fleets of these naval invaders. The kings of the era were terrified. The final letters from the city of Ugarit described unknown enemies arriving by sea, burning towns, and doing evil things, while the local armies were deployed elsewhere. But archaeological evidence paints a different picture of these attackers. They arrived in wagons with their women, children, and belongings. These fleets were filled with families on the move. The Sea Peoples were part of the chaos, but their presence raises a deeper question. Why were thousands of families suddenly willing to risk everything on the open sea? Core samples taken from the mud beneath the Sea of Galilee reveal what they were running from. By analyzing ancient pollen grains, geoarchaeologists found a sharp decline in Mediterranean trees and a spike in desert plants, evidence of a drought that lasted 150 years. While the rain stopped falling, the ground started shaking. Between 1225 and 1175 BCE, the region was hit by an earthquake storm, a rapid-fire sequence of major seismic shifts that shattered stone foundations. The combination of ruined infrastructure and decades without rain led to widespread crop failures. Starving populations across Anatolia and the Aegean had to abandon their cities to find resources elsewhere. As these refugees moved across the Mediterranean, they overran the vital ports and coastal strongholds, severing the shipping lanes that kept the economy alive. Without those maritime routes, the flow of copper and tin stopped. The great empires could no longer forge the bronze required to arm their soldiers or harvest their remaining crops. Deprived of their critical resources, the kingdoms starved. The exact integration that made these empires wealthy is what made them vulnerable. When one node in the supply chain broke, the entire system suffered a cascading failure. The aftermath was desolate. The Hittite Empire was permanently erased. The Mycenaeans entered a long period of decline, and while Egypt survived the invasions, its economy was crippled. The surviving populations scattered into small farming villages. The specialized labor required to build monuments, paint frescoes, and record history vanished for centuries. Yet the collapse of the superpowers created a vacuum. Without the Hittites and Egyptians monopolizing the trade routes, smaller groups like the Phoenicians and Israelites were able to step into the light. Centralized power was gone. Smaller groups, once overshadowed by emperors, were suddenly free to navigate the Mediterranean on their own terms. This shift required a technological pivot. Completely cut off from the international tin trade, the survivors had to find a different material to forge their tools. They turned to iron. It was harder to work, but crucially, iron ore was abundant and widely available. A blacksmith could equip a village without relying on an international shipping network. The Late Bronze Age demonstrate a hard rule of economics. Intense interconnectedness creates massive wealth, but it also weaves a highly fragile web. When the climate shifts and complex systems break apart, survival does not belong to the largest empires. It belongs to those who can adapt to the change.